The fluorescent lights hum overhead as I push the mop across the gleaming floor of the west corridor, my movements mechanical after 8 months of this same routine. The school is empty now, students and teachers long gone, just me and the echo of my footsteps, and the smell of pine cleaner that never quite masks the underlayer of teenage sweat and cafeteria grease. I'm thinking about nothing, which is exactly how I've survived the last 3 years, when I hear it. Voices, footsteps, running. My instincts scream at me to hide, to disappear into one of the classrooms, to become invisible the way I've perfected. But then I see her. A girl in a private school uniform, blonde hair flying behind her, face white with terror, and behind her 3 men in dark suits moving with predatory purpose. I see the bulge under their jackets. Guns. Professional. Organized. My body moves before my mind catches up, and I grab the girl's arm as she reaches me, yanking her sideways into the janitor's closet I'd left open. She gasps, but I pull her in and close the door, my hand clamping over her mouth as the footsteps pound closer. Her body trembles against mine in the tiny space that reeks of ammonia and bleach and sweat. Through the crack in the door I see them pass, expensive Italian shoes on marble floors, and I notice everything I shouldn't notice: the quality of their suits, the way they move like soldiers, the Glock one of them carries loose at his side. This is organized crime. This is the world I've been hiding from in a different form. The girl's breath is hot and panicked against my palm, and I lean close to her ear, whispering for her to stay quiet, stay still. My heart hammers, but my hands are steady. This is muscle memory from a life I've tried to forget. The men's voices fade down the corridor, and I count to 60, then 60 again before I slowly release her. She's crying silently, mascara tracking down her cheeks, and she can't be more than 16. I ask her name, and she whispers Sophia. I ask if she knows those men, and she shakes her head. I ask if she knows why they're after her, and her voice breaks when she says she doesn't know, but her uncle will kill them for this. The certainty in her voice chills me. Her uncle. Someone powerful enough to make men like that afraid. I should walk away. I should run. Instead, I grab cleaning supplies and we move fast through the service corridors I've memorized, the routes the maintenance staff uses that students never see. I get her to the back exit near the loading dock and watch her run to a car parked in the shadows. She looks back once, mouthing thank you, and then she's gone. I stand there in the cold night air realizing what I've just done. Those men saw me. Not clearly maybe, but enough. I've made myself visible to dangerous people, and visibility is death. I should disappear tonight, abandon this carefully constructed identity and run again. But something about that girl's terror has cracked something open in my chest. I walk back inside and my phone rings. Unknown number. My blood goes cold. Now please take a moment and subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from and what time is it. It is always fascinating to see where these stories get all around the world. Thank you. I don't answer the phone. My hands shake as I stare at the screen until it goes dark and silent. I stand in the empty hallway and realize I need to erase everything, every trace of where we hid, every sign that I helped her. I go back to the janitor's closet and clean obsessively, wiping down every surface we might have touched, reorganizing supplies to look undisturbed, my heart hammering the entire time. This is stupid. If they want to find evidence, they will. But I can't stop myself because action is better than the terror crawling up my throat. When I finally leave the building an hour later, I drive my decade-old Honda to the apartment I rent in a neighborhood 40 minutes away from the pristine campus where I work. The contrast is brutal. I park on a street where half the streetlights are broken and climb 3 flights of stairs that smell like old cooking grease and something I don't want to identify. My studio apartment is clean but sparse, nothing personal on the walls, nothing that can't be abandoned in 10 minutes. I've lived this way for 3 years, always ready to run, and I should be packing right now. Instead, I sit on my secondhand couch, and replay the moment I grabbed that girl's arm. Why did I do it? I've seen violence before, walked past suffering, kept my head down because survival requires invisibility. But something about her young face, her terror, cracked through my carefully maintained walls. I don't sleep. I lie in bed thinking in 3 languages, a habit from my old life, the educated life before I became a ghost. When dawn comes, I'm exhausted and wired, and I know I should call in sick, but that will draw attention. So I drive back to the school and park in the employee lot, and the first thing I notice is the cars. Black luxury sedans with tinted windows, expensive and predatory, clustered near the main entrance. My stomach drops. I clock in and try to stay in the basement where the maintenance offices are, but 20 minutes into my shift, I hear my name over the PA system. Not Emily Blake, the name on my employment paperwork, but close enough. I'm wanted in the headmistress's office immediately. The walk through those hallways feels like an execution march. My uniform suddenly feels too bright, too visible, the gray shirt and pants marking me as service staff. I can feel my pulse in my throat. Catherine Wentworth's office door is open, and I hear her voice, higher pitched than usual, anxious. I step inside and my eyes go immediately to the man standing by the window. Tall, maybe 6'2", wearing a suit that probably costs more than I make in 6 months, charcoal gray and perfectly tailored. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples. A face that's handsome in a brutal way, all hard angles and cold eyes the color of winter storms. He turns when I enter, and his gaze locks onto me with an intensity that makes my skin prickle. Behind him stands another man, shorter but built like violence, watching me with professional assessment. The headmistress is talking, nervous babble about my excellent service record, but the man by the window raises one hand and she stops mid-sentence. He looks at me for a long moment, and I see the exact second he catalogues everything about me, sees past the janitor's uniform, to whatever lies beneath. When he speaks, his voice is low and controlled, the kind of voice that doesn't need volume to command. He says, "Emily Tremaine, thank you for coming." My blood goes cold when he speaks my real name, and I watch Catherine Wentworth's face go pale with confusion, because she knows me as Emily Blake. Alexander makes a small gesture with his hand and says something about needing privacy, and Catherine practically runs from her own office, the door clicking shut behind her with terrible finality. Robert moves to stand in front of the door, and I realize I'm trapped in here with these 2 men who radiate danger like heat from asphalt in summer. Alexander begins to circle me slowly, and I force myself to stand still, even though every instinct screams at me to run. His voice is calm and controlled when he speaks, thanking me for protecting Sophia last night. And the way he says her name is full of something that might be love, if men like him are capable of it. She's his niece, he tells me. His brother's daughter, his only living family. I feel the weight of that knowledge settle in my chest, because I helped someone who matters to a man like this, and that changes everything. Then his tone shifts, drops into something colder, and he asks why a woman with my background in education is working as a janitor under a false name. The question hangs in the air, and I realize he's had me investigated, probably had people digging into my life within hours of Sophia getting home safely. How much does he know? Everything, I suspect, from the way his winter storm eyes watch me with that unnerving intensity. I decide to give him partial truth because lies won't work now. I tell him I'm hiding, but I don't say from whom. Alexander moves closer, invading the careful space I maintain around myself, and I catch the scent of his cologne, something expensive and dark, and feel the heat radiating from his body. He tells me the men who came after Sophia work for James Colborne, a rival who has declared war on the Thornhill family, and now that I've been seen by Colborne's men, I'm a target. I argue that I'm nothing to them, just a janitor who happened to be there, but Alexander's eyes darken, and he steps even closer until I have to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Colborne will assume I'm connected to him now, he says. Will assume I matter, and men like Colborne eliminate anyone who might be useful to their enemies. He gives me two choices in that quiet, dangerous voice. Accept his protection or disappear tonight, and hope Colborne doesn't find me first. The room feels too small suddenly, and I move toward the door, but Robert is there, solid and immovable. I tell Alexander I don't want either option, and his expression doesn't change, but something flickers in his eyes. He explains in a voice that drops even lower that this is not a negotiation, that Colborne's men kill witnesses, that I helped Sophia, which means he owes me a debt, but also means I'm part of this war now, whether I want to be or not. I think about running again, about abandoning another carefully constructed identity, about spending another 3 years looking over my shoulder, and the exhaustion of it crashes over me. I agree, but only until the threat passes, only until I'm not useful as leverage or target. Alexander's smile is cold, and knowing when he says that might be longer than I think. Robert drives me to the estate in a black Mercedes that still has that new leather smell, and I sit in the back seat watching the city change through tinted windows, neighborhoods shifting from worn to polished, buildings growing taller and more pristine until we're in a part of town I've only seen in magazines. Robert doesn't speak despite my attempts at conversation, and eventually I give up and pull out my phone, texting the only person who might notice my absence, a waitress named Clara from the diner where I sometimes eat breakfast, telling her I have a family emergency and will be gone for a while. The lie comes smoothly because I've become excellent at lying over the past 3 years. I think about how I've survived by being invisible, by keeping my head down and my life small, and now I'm driving toward the home of a Mafia boss because I made one impulsive choice to help a terrified girl. The gates appear suddenly, iron and ornate, opening smoothly as we approach. And then I see the estate itself, sprawling across manicured grounds, all stone and glass and money, the kind of wealth that builds walls and buys silence. Security cameras track our progress, and I spot at least 4 guards patrolling the grounds. We pull up to the main entrance and Robert opens my door with mechanical efficiency, leading me inside where an older woman with kind eyes and graying hair introduces herself as Martha, the housekeeper. She shows me upstairs to a guest room, and I try not to stare at the marble floors and the artwork on the walls that might be originals. The room she leads me to is larger than my entire apartment, decorated in soft creams and blues, with a massive bed and windows overlooking gardens I can barely process. Martha tells me Mr. Thornhill will send for me when he's ready to discuss arrangements, and then she's gone and I'm alone in this beautiful cage. I explore carefully, opening the closet to find it empty, checking the bathroom which has heated floors and a shower with 6 different heads, and then I notice there are no locks on the inside of the door, and that small detail makes my skin crawl. I shower because I feel grimy and want to wash away the morning's fear, and when I emerge wrapped in a towel softer than anything I've ever owned, I find clothes laid out on the bed in exactly my size, expensive jeans and a cashmere sweater in dark green. How much does he already know about me? I dress with shaking hands, and when I turn around, Sophia is standing in my doorway, her young face streaked with tears, and she rushes forward and hugs me before I can stop her, thanking me over and over for saving her life. I hold her awkwardly at first, and then something in me softens, despite my fear, because she's just a kid who's terrified and alone. She pulls back and tells me her parents died 6 months ago in a car accident that she thinks wasn't really an accident, that Alexander has been her guardian since, that she's isolated and lonely and scared all the time, and I find myself comforting her, even though I know I shouldn't get attached to this girl or this situation. A presence in the doorway makes us both turn, and Alexander stands there watching us with an expression I can't read, something complex moving behind those winter storm eyes. He sends Sophia away gently, and then turns that intense gaze on me, inviting me to dinner in a tone that's phrased as courtesy, but lands like a command. and I nod because what choice do I have? At dinner, he tells me that Colborne didn't just randomly target Sophia at school, that someone inside his organization told Colborne exactly when and where she would be vulnerable, and his voice is cold with controlled rage when he says the words that change everything: "There is a traitor." Dinner is served in a private dining room that feels both intimate and exposed, just the two of us at a table meant for 12, and I sit across from Alexander trying to taste the food that I know must be expensive, but might as well be cardboard for all I notice. He asks me questions about my past, probing gently but persistently, and I deflect each one with practiced ease, even as my heart races, because I can feel him learning me anyway, reading the spaces between my words. He shifts tactics and tells me about the war with Colborne instead, his voice measured and cold as he describes territorial disputes over shipping routes and distribution networks, business conflicts that have escalated from economic to violent, old grudges between families that go back 2 generations. Colburn is ruthless and escalating, Alexander says, and I watch his jaw tighten when he talks about the attacks on his businesses, the men he's lost, the constant pressure of fighting a war on multiple fronts while keeping Sophia safe and hunting for the traitor in his own organization. He needs to keep her protected while rooting out whoever betrayed them and striking back hard enough to make Colburn retreat, and then he turns those winter storm eyes on me and says he wants me to stay close to Sophia as a companion and unofficial bodyguard since she clearly trusts me. I protest immediately that I'm not qualified, that I'm just a janitor who got lucky. But Alexander leans back in his chair and counters that I handled myself well under pressure, and more importantly, Sophia needs someone who isn't part of his world, someone normal she can talk to. The real reason hangs unspoken but heavy between us, and I can read it in his eyes. He doesn't know who in his organization he can trust, and I'm an outsider with no loyalties except the ones I choose. I ask what I get out of this arrangement besides protection, and the question comes out sharper than I intend. Alexander leans forward, and the air between us changes, charges with something that makes my skin prickle, and he tells me he'll pay me generously, more money than I could make in 5 years of janitorial work. But more importantly, he'll find out who I'm hiding from and make the problem disappear. The casual way he offers to eliminate another human being should horrify me, but instead, I feel a desperate hope unfurling in my chest because I've been running for 3 years and I'm so tired of looking over my shoulder. But accepting means trusting him with everything, with my life and my secrets, and I don't trust anyone anymore. The internal war must show on my face, because Alexander watches me with that unnerving intensity, and finally I agree to a 1-week trial, just 1 week to see if this arrangement can work. His satisfaction is visible in the slight curve of his mouth and the way his shoulders relax infinitesimally. After dinner, Robert appears and briefs me on security protocols with military efficiency, showing me panic buttons disguised as jewelry and explaining safe room locations and evacuation routes, and I absorb it all while feeling like I've stepped into someone else's life. That night, I lie in the too-soft bed in the too-quiet room and cannot sleep, my mind racing through everything that's happened in the past 36 hours. Voices drift up from somewhere below, and I slip out of bed and move carefully through the hallway, following the sound to Alexander's study, where the door is slightly ajar. I can see him through the gap, pacing like a caged predator, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian that I understand perfectly, though I've never told anyone I speak 4 languages. I catch enough to know another of his businesses was hit tonight, a warehouse burned, 3 men in the hospital, and his voice is tight with barely contained rage. When he turns and sees me standing in the doorway, his mask slips for just a moment, and I see the exhaustion and fury underneath, the weight of empire and war and responsibility pressing down on him. We stare at each other in the dim light, and something passes between us, some recognition of shared burdens and hidden depths. Then he asks in a voice gone quiet and dangerous if I've ever killed anyone, and the question hangs in the air between us like smoke. I don't answer Alexander's question, but the silence that stretches between us is answer enough, and I see something shift in his eyes. A recognition of darkness meeting darkness, of violence understood even if not spoken. He moves to the sideboard and pours 2 glasses of whiskey, amber liquid catching the lamplight, and hands me one without asking if I want it. I take it because my hands need something to hold, and because the burn might steady me. We sit in chairs near the cold fireplace, and for a long moment neither of us speaks, just the sound of our breathing and the tick of an antique clock somewhere in the shadows. Alexander starts talking in a voice lower and rawer than I've heard from him before, telling me about his brother Michael, Sophia's father, who wanted out of the family business, who dreamed of something clean and normal. Alexander let him go, he says, set him up with legitimate businesses and distance and every protection he could think of. But someone still got to him, made it look like an accident, took him and his wife on a mountain road in the rain. The guilt in Alexander's voice is a living thing, and I watch his hands tighten on his glass until I think it might shatter. He couldn't protect the one person who mattered most, and now Sophia is all he has left of his brother, and he will burn the world down before he lets anyone take her too. The raw pain in his words cracks something open in me, and I find myself sharing pieces of my story I haven't told anyone in 3 years, carefully edited, but true enough to matter. I tell him I witnessed something I shouldn't have, that the person involved has resources and reach and has been hunting me ever since, that I've been invisible for 3 years, but invisibility is its own kind of death, a prison made of silence and fear. Alexander watches me with an intensity that makes my skin warm, and my pulse quicken, and when he speaks, his voice is quiet and certain. He promises that under his protection, no one will touch me, that he has resources too, and he will use every single one of them to keep me safe. The sincerity in his voice is dangerous, because I want desperately to believe him, to trust that someone can actually stand between me and the nightmare I've been running from. The moment stretches taut between us, charged with things neither of us is saying, and then Robert appears in the doorway with his face set in grim lines, and everything changes. Colborne's location has been confirmed, he says, and I watch Alexander shift instantly from vulnerable man to cold commander, his mask sliding back into place with brutal efficiency. He stands and tells me to stay with Sophia tomorrow while he handles business, and I understand without asking that he means violence, that men will likely die because of whatever he's about to do. The next day passes in strange domesticity as I spend hours with Sophia, who is brighter and more animated with me there, talking about school and friends and her dreams of studying art in Paris someday. I ache at the normalcy she's trying so hard to maintain, this girl who's lost everything but still hopes for a future. But I notice the tight security, the way guards patrol in pairs, and I mark the ones who seem nervous or won't meet my eyes because Alexander's words about a traitor loop through my mind. He returns late that night, and I see him first in the hallway checking on us, blood on his shirt cuff that he hasn't noticed yet, and when our eyes meet I should be horrified, but instead I feel a pull toward him, this man who fights for his family with everything he has. Later I discover I've been given access to parts of the house others don't have, and in his study I find files left out on the desk, perhaps deliberately, information about Colborne and his operations. But then I see another file with my real name typed across the tab, and my hands shake as I open it to find everything, my entire history laid bare, and inside is information about the man I've been hiding from, including a recent photograph showing David Pembroke still looking for me, still hunting, and I realize Alexander has known exactly who and what I'm running from since before he ever brought me here. My hands shake as I stare down at the file with my real name typed across the tab in neat letters, seeing everything laid bare, my entire history exposed. And Alexander has known exactly who and what I'm running from since before he brought me here, maybe even before he first looked at me in that headmistress's office. The feeling of exposure is visceral, like being stripped naked under harsh lights, and fury rises hot in my chest because I trusted him enough to stay here, to protect Sophia, to sit in his study drinking whiskey and sharing pieces of my soul. When the door opens behind me, I spin around, and Alexander stands there still wearing the shirt with blood on the cuff, his expression unreadable as his eyes move from my face to the open file in my hands. I confront him immediately, my voice shaking with anger, demanding to know how long he's known, how deep his investigation went, whether everything he's said to me has been manipulation. He doesn't deny it, and somehow that makes it worse. He steps into the room and closes the door with a quiet click and tells me in that calm, controlled voice that he investigated me thoroughly because he doesn't take chances with Sophia's safety, that he needed to know exactly who I was before he brought me into his home. But then his voice shifts lower, and he tells me that David Pembroke, the corrupt detective connected to the trafficking ring I witnessed, has expanded his search in the last 2 weeks, that he's getting close to finding me, that the invisibility I've maintained for 3 years is fracturing. Alexander offers again to eliminate the problem permanently, and the casual way he discusses ending a life should repulse me, but instead I feel torn between moral repulsion and desperate hope for freedom from the nightmare that's hunted me. I ask him what he wants in return, because nothing is free in his world, and I've learned that lesson too well in my own. Alexander moves closer, invading my space the way he did in that first meeting, and the air between us crackles with tension that's been building since the moment our eyes first met. He says he wants me to stop lying to him and to myself, that I'm not helpless, and I'm not just hiding, that I've been surviving, and that takes strength he respects and understands. Something in his words cracks through my anger, and I see him differently in this moment, not as the manipulative crime lord who invaded my privacy, but as someone who recognizes the fighter I've had to become. I admit in a voice barely above a whisper that I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid, tired of living half a life in the shadows. Alexander's hand rises and his fingers brush my cheek with unexpected gentleness, and the touch sends electricity through my skin. His eyes drop to my mouth and I know he's going to kiss me, and I'm already leaning in when alarms blare throughout the house, loud and urgent and terrifying. Alexander's entire body shifts into combat mode, and he's moving toward the desk, pulling a weapon from a hidden drawer, his face gone cold and deadly. He orders me to get Sophia to the safe room now, and I'm already running, my heart hammering against my ribs as gunfire erupts somewhere below us. I race through the mansion's corridors, the sound of violence growing louder, and burst into Sophia's room where she's frozen in her bed, eyes wide with terror. I physically drag her up and pull her toward the hallway, half carrying her as she stumbles beside me. More gunfire, closer now, and the acrid smell of smoke reaches us. We make it to the safe room, and I punch in the code with shaking fingers and shove Sophia inside, slamming the heavy reinforced door behind us. The lock engages with a solid thunk, and Sophia collapses against me, sobbing, while the sounds of violence echo through the walls around us. Time becomes elastic as we huddle there, minutes stretching into hours, or maybe only seconds, and my training from my past life surfaces as I scan the room for weaknesses, for alternative exits, arming myself with a heavy metal fire extinguisher, because it's better than nothing. Sophia asks me through her tears who I really am, and I owe her honesty now, so I tell her I'm someone who made enemies by doing the right thing, someone who's been running and hiding, but is tired of being prey. Sophia says through her tears, that's who Alexander is too, someone who does terrible things for the right reasons, and I'm struck by her perception. The violence outside stops suddenly, and the silence is somehow worse than the noise, oppressive and threatening. Then the safe room door handle turns slowly and my blood goes ice cold, because the code hasn't been entered and someone is trying to break in. I position myself between Sophia and the door with the heavy fire extinguisher gripped in both hands, my heart hammering so hard I can feel it in my throat, but my hands are steady because fear and adrenaline have sharpened everything into crystal clarity. The door shudders under force, and I hear metal groaning as someone tries to break through the reinforced lock, and Sophia's fingers dig into my arm hard enough to bruise. Then Alexander's voice comes through the steel, rough and commanding, giving the code phrase that only he and Robert know, and relief floods through me so intensely my knees almost buckle. I punch in the code with shaking fingers, and the door swings open and Alexander stands there, blood spattered across his face and shirt, but moving without injury, his eyes scanning us both with an intensity that steals my breath. Robert is behind him, also marked with violence, and the relief in Alexander's face when he sees we're unharmed is quickly masked, but I caught it, that raw, vulnerable moment before his control snapped back into place. He holds my gaze for a long moment, and something passes between us, acknowledgement and gratitude, and something deeper I'm not ready to name. The attack is over, he tells us in that calm, controlled voice that sounds nothing like calm. 4 of Colborne's men dead, and 2 captured for questioning. But then his expression hardens further, and he says one of his own guards was helping them from the inside, and the traitor escaped during the chaos, which means they know everything about his security and his vulnerabilities. Alexander makes arrangements immediately to move Sophia to a more secure location, a property in the mountains that fewer people know about, and tells me I'll go with her without phrasing it as a question. I agree because there's nowhere else I want to be, and because Sophia needs me, and because leaving means staying near him. The next hours pass in controlled chaos as we pack essentials, and Alexander coordinates with people I don't see, his phone constantly at his ear. As we prepare to leave in the pre-dawn darkness, Alexander catches me alone in the hallway, and the adrenaline and fear still coursing through both of us converts into something else, something electric and undeniable. He tells me I was brave and effective in protecting Sophia, and I see respect in his eyes that makes my chest tight. I tell him I'm still angry he investigated me without permission, and he says he's not sorry, because it means he can help me, and his honesty is disarming. I challenge him, asking why he cares about my safety beyond his debt for protecting Sophia, and something in Alexander's control cracks. He admits in a voice gone rough that he hasn't been able to stop thinking about me since he first saw me in that headmistress's office, that I'm fire and strength wrapped in vulnerability, and he wants me safe not just for Sophia, but for himself. The confession shakes me because I've felt the pull between us, but hearing him voice it makes it real and dangerous. I admit the attraction is mutual, but we're in impossible circumstances with violence surrounding us, and futures uncertain. Alexander steps closer and cups my face in his hands still marked with other men's blood, and kisses me deep and claiming, his mouth demanding and possessive, and I respond with equal intensity, pouring all my fear and need and desperate hope into the kiss. Heat and need burn between us, and when we break apart we're both breathing hard, and his forehead rests against mine. He promises when this is over, when I'm safe and Sophia is safe, they'll explore what this is building between them. And I want desperately to believe in a future, but I've learned not to hope for things that can be taken away. We leave for the mountain property in a guarded convoy, just as dawn breaks, and I'm watching the landscape pass when my phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number, and my blood turns to ice because it's a photo of my old apartment, the one I abandoned 3 years ago when I first started running, and a message that reads simply, "Found you." My blood turns to ice as I stare at the photo on my phone screen, and I turn it toward Alexander without speaking, because words feel impossible right now. His expression hardens immediately as he takes the phone from my shaking hands, and his eyes scan the message before he's already making calls, his voice sharp and commanding as he orders increased security protocols and has someone trace the number. I watch the mountains pass outside the window while my heart hammers against my ribs because David Pembroke has found me after 3 years of careful invisibility, and somehow he's connected me to Alexander, which means I've brought danger to the only people who've tried to protect me. Alexander ends his call and tells me the number is a burner phone, untraceable, but that Pembroke must have found the connection between us and is trying to intimidate me into running again, into leaving his protection. His voice is certain when he says it won't work, that the mountain property is a fortress, isolated and defendable. And I want to believe him, but fear has wrapped cold fingers around my spine. When we arrive hours later, I'm struck by the stark beauty of the location, mountains rising on all sides and forests thick enough to hide anything. But the remoteness that makes it defensible also makes it a trap if things go wrong. The property is smaller than the estate, more like a large cabin built from stone and timber, and Alexander explains only 6 people know about this location. We settle in with careful precision, me, Sophia, Alexander, Robert, and 4 guards that Alexander trusts with his life. Sophia is shaken by the escalating danger, and I find her crying in her room that first night, so I hold her and promise I'll keep her safe, even though I'm not sure I can keep that promise. I begin teaching her basic self-defense the next day, simple moves that might buy her seconds to run, and Alexander watches these sessions from the doorway with an expression I can't quite read, but that looks like approval. Days pass in tense waiting where every sound makes me jump, and I sleep poorly in a room down the hall from Sophia. Emily and Alexander orbit each other like binary stars, the attraction building with every accidental touch and lingering glance, but circumstances preventing real intimacy. We talk late at night when neither of us can sleep, and he tells me about inheriting the family business at 22 when his father was killed, about choices made in blood that can never be unmade, about the weight of responsibility and power. I tell him about my former life as a social worker who stumbled onto Pembroke's trafficking operation while trying to help a teenage girl, how I reported it through proper channels and watched as Pembroke's connections buried the evidence and painted me as mentally unstable, how I became a target the moment I tried to do the right thing. We're both trapped by our pasts, prisoners of choices we can't undo. On the 4th night, Alexander receives intelligence that makes his expression go cold and deadly. Colborne and Pembroke have formed an alliance, 2 enemies combining forces because Colborne wants Alexander destroyed, and Pembroke wants me silenced. Alexander makes a decision and tells me he's going on the offensive, that he'll take the fight to them rather than waiting for them to find us. I argue against him leaving, but he says the best way to protect me and Sophia is to end the threats permanently, and I understand he means killing them both. Robert will stay as head of security with the 4 guards. Before Alexander leaves, we have a moment alone in the hallway, and the fear of him not coming back loosens all my careful control. We kiss desperately, his hands in my hair and mine gripping his shirt, and I ask him to be careful, and he promises to come back to me, and I want to believe him. After he leaves, the cabin feels emptier, and I feel his absence like a physical wound. 2 days pass with no word, and I'm teaching Sophia another defensive move when the security alerts trigger, and Robert's expression goes grim as he checks the monitors. Multiple vehicles approaching fast, too many to be Alexander returning. Robert orders defensive positions, and I get Sophia to an interior room while my heart threatens to break through my ribs. Through the security cameras, I see the vehicles stop and men pour out with weapons raised, and then I see him. David Pembroke, older and harder than I remember but unmistakable, and beside him stands a man who must be James Colborne. They've found us, and Alexander isn't here, and we're about to go to war. Robert orders everyone to defensive positions with sharp commands that cut through my panic, and I get Sophia into an interior room, pushing her behind the heavy oak dresser while my hands move with purpose that surprises me. Robert has seen my competence over these days, and he presses a weapon into my hands, a compact pistol that feels both foreign and familiar, and tells me to use it if they breach the inner rooms. The assault begins with gunfire that shatters windows and punches holes in the wooden walls, and I move on instinct, helping Robert fortify our position with furniture, while the 4 guards return fire from different points. My training from before I started running surfaces fully now, muscle memory from the self-defense courses I took when I first witnessed Pembroke's crimes and knew I might need to fight. The attackers are numerous and organized, advancing with military precision, and I watch through a shattered window as they move in coordinated patterns. One guard goes down with a cry that makes Sophia scream, and I have to leave her to help drag him to cover, while blood pools beneath him. Then another guard falls, and Robert's expression is grim as he reloads, and I can see in his eyes that we won't last much longer. We're outnumbered at least 3-1. I make a decision that crystallizes with terrible clarity. I tell Robert I'm going to trade myself for the other's safety, and he refuses immediately, his voice hard. But I point out that Pembroke wants me specifically, and if I walk out, he might take me and leave because I'm his objective. Robert knows it's suicide, but he also knows we won't hold much longer, and Sophia will die if this continues. I pull out my phone with shaking hands and record a message for Alexander, telling him what I'm doing and that Sophia is in the back bedroom and that Robert tried to stop me. I tell him other things too, feelings I haven't voiced, that he made me believe in safety again and that I'm grateful he came into my life, even if it ends like this. I leave the phone with Robert, whose jaw is clenched and eyes are bright with anger and respect. I walk out the front door with my hands raised, calling for David Pembroke, and the gunfire stops as if someone cut the strings of a puppet. Pembroke steps forward from behind a vehicle, and triumph twists his features, and he's aged in 3 years, harder and meaner, but I'd know him anywhere. Colborne is beside him, watching with cold interest, like I'm an insect under glass. Pembroke says I've caused him 3 years of trouble, made him look weak, and now I'll disappear permanently into one of the holes he's dug for inconvenient witnesses. I force my voice steady and say I'll go quietly if he leaves the others alone, that he has what he wants. Colborne laughs, a sound without humor, and says he's here to send Alexander Thornhill a message written in blood, and they'll kill everyone inside and burn the place down. Emily's heart sinks, because I've miscalculated badly. My sacrifice means nothing to men like these. Pembroke reaches for me with possessive cruelty in his smile, and something inside me snaps, 3 years of fear converting instantly to pure rage, and I move. I strike Pembroke in the throat with the edge of my hand, and he staggers back choking while Colborne's men raise their weapons. But I'm already moving, grabbing Pembroke and using his body as a shield, while my other hand goes for the gun at his hip, and I have it out and pressed to his temple before anyone can fire. My voice is steady when I tell them all to lower their weapons, or I paint the mountain with their boss's brain, and for a frozen moment, no one moves, and I can feel Pembroke's pulse jackrabbiting against my forearm, where I have him in a chokehold. Colborne's expression shifts from amused to coldly calculating, and he raises one hand to stop his men from shooting, and says, "I'm full of surprises, but this changes nothing, because the moment I pull that trigger, I'm dead." I tell him that's fine, because I've been dead for 3 years anyway. I've been a ghost running from shadows, and I'm tired, and if I'm going down, I'm taking Pembroke with me, and maybe that will be enough. Something in my voice must convince him I mean it because his posture changes and he asks what I want, and I say let the people inside walk away, let them leave unharmed, and I'll give him Pembroke and myself. Colborne considers this, and says he came here to send Thornhill a message, and I'm not enough of a message. He needs blood. Then the sound of helicopter rotors cuts through the air, growing louder, and I risk a glance up to see 2 helicopters cresting the mountain ridge, and Colborne's face goes hard as he realizes what's happening. The helicopters descend fast, and men rappel down before they even land. At least a dozen armed men in tactical gear, and I see Alexander hit the ground moving like violence personified with murder in his eyes. His gaze finds me holding Pembroke, and something deadly and possessive flashes across his face before he's raising his weapon, and his voice cuts across the clearing, ordering Colborne's men to drop their weapons now. Colborne's men are outnumbered suddenly and outgunned, and they hesitate, looking to Colborne, who is doing cold calculations behind his eyes. Alexander walks forward slowly, and every line of his body is controlled rage, and he says Colborne has 10 seconds to order his men down before Alexander kills every single one of them, starting with Colborne himself. I feel Pembroke trembling against me. His earlier confidence evaporated, and he's trying to speak, but my chokehold won't let him get words out. Colborne stares at Alexander for a long moment, and I can see him weighing his options, weighing his pride against survival, and then he gives a sharp nod and his men lower their weapons. Alexander's men move in fast, disarming and restraining them with brutal efficiency, and Alexander walks straight to me, and his hand comes up to cup my face, and he asks if I'm hurt. I shake my head, and he tells me to let Pembroke go, that he has him now. And I release my hold and step back on shaking legs as Pembroke collapses, gasping. Alexander catches me as my knees buckle, and the adrenaline drains out all at once, leaving me hollow, and he holds me against his chest while his heart pounds against my ear, and he says he's got me. I'm safe now, and I believe him. Alexander tells me not to move while his men secure Colborne and Pembroke with brutal efficiency, zip ties cutting into wrists, and Pembroke is spitting curses while Colborne stays silent with calculation still working behind his eyes even in defeat. Robert emerges from the house with Sophia, and when she sees Alexander, she runs to him, and he catches her with one arm while keeping me anchored against him with the other, and the three of us stand there like something fragile and new and worth protecting. Alexander's voice is cold when he orders his men to take Colborne and Pembroke to separate vehicles, and he tells Robert to secure the perimeter, and Robert nods with understanding of what comes next passing between them. Alexander finally releases me and cups my face with both hands and asks if I'm hurt, and I shake my head, but I'm shaking all over now, the adrenaline crash hitting hard, and he tells Sophia to go inside with Robert, and she hesitates, looking between us before obeying. When we're alone, Alexander's control fractures and he kisses me hard, desperate, like he needs to confirm I'm real and alive. And I kiss him back with equal ferocity while my hands fist in his shirt. He breaks away and presses his forehead to mine and says when he got my message, he's never moved faster in his life. He called in every favor and resource to get here, and the fear in his voice undoes me. I tell him I'm sorry I walked out, but I couldn't let Sophia die, and he says he knows, and that's one of the reasons he's falling in love with me, my fierce protective instinct even when it's reckless. The words hang between us, and I realize I'm falling too, have been falling since he promised to keep me safe and actually meant it. I tell him I'm tired of running and hiding and being afraid, and I want a life again, a real life, and I want it with him if he'll have me despite the impossibility of our circumstances. Alexander's smile is the first genuine one I've seen from him, and he says there's nothing impossible about it. He'll handle Pembroke and Colborne permanently tonight, and then I'll be free and we'll figure out the rest together. I should be horrified by the casual promise of murder, but I've moved beyond that. They would have killed everyone I care about, and sometimes monsters need to be put down. He asks if I can live with his world, the violence and moral grayness, and I tell him I stopped living in black and white the moment I went into hiding. I've been surviving in gray for 3 years, and at least with him, it's a gray I choose. We walk back to the house hand in hand, and Sophia is waiting inside, her eyes red from crying, but she's smiling when she sees us together. And she says she's glad because she was hoping Emily would stay, because she's never felt safer than with both of us protecting her. Alexander makes calls while I sit with Sophia and hold her while she processes the trauma of another attack. And I promise her it's over now. Her uncle will make sure of it, and she believes me because she knows what her uncle is capable of. That night, after Sophia is finally sleeping, and Alexander has disappeared to handle what he called loose ends, I stand at the window watching the dark mountains and thinking about the future I thought I'd never have. And when Alexander returns hours later with blood washed from his hands, but darkness still in his eyes, I go to him without hesitation and let him hold me while the weight of what he's done settles between us, necessary violence to purchase peace, and